Loved Like a Little. Written by Aria Grace. Narrated by Alex Michael. Chapter 1. Axel. This is where I'm at now. I dropped a couple weights on each of the corners so the plans didn't curl up. What do you think? Jason and Tony were standing to my left. Jesse and Harris were on the opposite side of the table, all waiting for the big reveal. We waited until all the other dogs had been picked up for the day, and Billy had left before reviewing the details. This project was supposed to be a surprise for him. I think he knew something was going on, but he wasn't the type to ask questions that weren't any of his business. It was actually sweet to watch him peek around for hints while trying to be discreet. "This is amazing, Axel," Jason was bouncing on his toes. "Is that a laundry room?" Tony pulled him close to his side and kissed the top of his head. "You guys need to be able to wash the towels here instead of lugging them home every weekend to wash there." "Thank God." Jesse put his elbows on the lower half of the paper so he could get a closer look. "And the bathroom is amazing." "Well, in order to sell the story that the apartment is only going to be used for dog care and boarding, we need to make sure everything needed for dog grooming is included. Hence, a giant shower and washing station." "Is there a bedroom door so we can use the break room, even if someone is sleeping?" Jason leaned close to Jesse, and they pointed out features to each other. "Yeah, I'm putting in barn doors so the space can be opened up during non-working hours. But when he's sleeping or needs privacy, the doors can close off and you can still access the kitchen and shower areas." I pointed to the door between the water closet and the shower. "So, we can tell Billy the bathroom is totally his and will only use the downstairs bathroom, but the shower could be used for grooming if ever needed." "I like it." Jason was nodding as he spoke. He had been the primary contact in the design, but Tony was paying for the project, so he had provided some input as well. "Yeah, for all the years I had roommates, the one thing I hated sharing with people was a toilet. So he'll have some privacy and a storage room that's accessible from the bedroom, and then he can just go through the connecting door to shower." "So the big question now is," Tony crossed his arms over his chest, looking like the businessman he was during the day. As the owner of an urgent care facility and a prominent member of the city commerce department, he easily handled high-stakes decisions while balancing the well-being of those he cared about at the same time, which is how he ended up getting involved in this project. Well, that was one reason. The bigger impetus was his boyfriend Jason mentioning that he wanted this facility for a doggy daycare with his dog-walking friend, Jesse. "How does the budget—" Jason cut him off with his own question. "The timeline look? When can Billy live here for real?" I smirked at Tony before giving Jason my full attention. He expected me to respect his boy the same way I respected him, so I knew he appreciated the gesture. "As far as timeline goes, we're probably 8 weeks out." I took a step back and pulled up my calendar on my phone. "I've got 2 projects to finish up next week, and then I'll be here full-time for the next 4 weeks, and then part-time after that until it's done. But 2 months should be good, as long as we don't encounter any hiccups with the permits." "That seems reasonable." Tony slipped his hands into his pockets and rocked on his heels. "And the budget?" "We're on the budget. I've identified some of the fixtures that I can get a deal on, so if the plan is approved, I'll get those ordered. They could start arriving in the next week or 2. Jesse bit his lip and then tugged on Harris's arm, silently conveying some concern that he didn't speak aloud. Harris slipped his arm around his boy and nodded, obviously aware of the issue. "Is there any way we can get a temporary area set up sooner than that? The boys are worried that Billy might not be totally safe at home." "What do you mean?" I didn't know Billy well, had only met him a few times when picking up and dropping off my dog, but he seemed like a sweet kid who deserved better than what he was dealing with. "If he's in danger, we can figure something out for him tonight." My daddy side had basically been dormant for the past few years. Between trying to work as much as possible and hitting the gym on a daily basis as a distraction to my loneliness, considering a relationship was the last thing on my mind. But after reconnecting with Harris and Tony, the thought of having someone I could call my own had been taking up more headspace. Jesse and Jason were such sweet boys, and the dynamics they shared with their daddies made me a little jealous. I'd even considered going to Primal during one of their little nights to see if there was anyone new that caught my attention. But something always stopped me. Work was the obvious excuse I used to keep me at home. But recently, there was also a budding attraction to the kid I was building this new space for. Billy was exactly my type, soft and shy and so cute. The fact that he loved animals was just gravy. But he was going through stuff at home, and that made me even more vested in getting him out of there. No, I don't think it's that bad. Jesse was the one to speak up. He cleared his throat and sighed. I've tried to get him to open up about how his dad treats him, but he brushes me off. I don't think it's abusive yet, but it's definitely not healthy. The sooner he has the option to stay here, the better. I tapped my finger against my jaw and thought about it. The appliances I want to order should be in by Friday. If they are, I can temporarily install them in the storage room down here. And if he doesn't mind sharing the space with the boxes you have in there, we can probably have a backup plan ready for him in the next few days. At least as an option for those nights when he doesn't want to go home. Jesse's eyes lit up, and Jason was already nodding. Yeah, that would be great. He's not picky. I think he stays in his car sometimes, so he'll be happy with anything. I've been tempted to buy a pull-out couch for him to use here, but I know the dogs will take it over, so it will get dirty pretty quick. I'll get it worked out. I already had a plan of how I could rearrange the storage room to make something work. Since you mentioned wanting a pull-out sofa upstairs in the break room long-term anyway, I can get one now and set it up for him. Then, we'll just move it after the studio is done. Yes, please. Jason and Jesse both spoke up at the same time, earning amused grins from their daddies. I got a few more decisions from the guys about the finish and fixtures before they headed out for the night and I got to work. I hadn't planned on really digging into this project for a few weeks, but that plan had gone out the window as soon as I learned that Billy wasn't in a safe situation at home. Even if he wasn't in physical danger, I didn't want him forced to spend time with someone who didn't care for him the way Jason and Jesse did. They hadn't known him for long before inviting him to work for them, and as soon as they found out about his situation, they committed a pretty hefty investment to help him out. I respected that commitment and would do everything I could to make their vision a reality as quick as possible. If that meant I would be working from 5 to midnight every day for the next week, I was happy to do it. For some reason, I was ready to do just about anything to make sure Billy was safe and secure every night when he went to sleep. Chapter 2. Billy. After going to the diner at the far end of the city just to kill some time and stopping at a few stores along the way, I finally got home a little after 10. Dad was usually passed out by then, so if I was quiet, I could slip right past him and go straight to bed. Not that I would get much sleep. Since coming home to live with my dad after graduating from culinary school, I'd had some issues that made it difficult to sleep. The kind of issues that were so humiliating I couldn't talk to anyone about them, and I had no idea how to make them go away. More stressful than what I was dealing with, if my dad found out any of my secrets, he'd kick me out for sure. Not because he'd have to deal with them or any pragmatic reasons like that. He hadn't lifted a finger to take care of himself or the house since Mom died last year. But he'd never been shy about telling me how much of a disappointment I was to him, or why I'd never amount to anything. From the time I started spending time with Mom in the kitchen when I was a little boy, he started to pull away from me. He hated when I did anything that he deemed to be women's work. Anything like cooking or cleaning or even making my own bed was all beneath me as his son. And if I did them, it was just further proof that I wasn't worthy of being called his son. While my mom was alive, he at least tolerated me. His disdain was mostly expressed as indifference, and he could ignore me like a champ. He put up such a good front that I had almost forgotten how much he hated me. It was easy to believe he cared about me, but was just too busy to chit-chat or take an interest in my life when my mom was around to pick up the slack. It was amazing what we could make ourselves believe if we wished hard enough for it to be true. But things went downhill fast after Mom died. I knew my dad was depressed and had started drinking a lot more than usual, but I had no idea how far gone he was. When I came back to live at home after graduation, I found out he had just abandoned Mom's dog at a daycare facility. That's when it became clear that I would never have a real relationship with him. My mom loved that dog almost as much as she loved me, and if he didn't care about Peaches, I didn't think I was much higher on the list. I was able to track down JJ Doggone Daycare and found out that Peaches was safely living with Jason and Tony. Jason and Jesse were kind enough to offer me a job, and they bought the dog treats I baked as an extra revenue stream. They'd been so good to me. Not only did I get to bake for a living, even on a small scale, but I had a job I loved, and my two bosses were so cool. They were everything I wanted to be. kind, funny, and loved by their daddies. Also, I got to see Peaches at work every day. That was great for me. But without that small responsibility of having to take care of a pet on a regular basis, Dad was spiraling, which made living with him an even more tense situation. He wasn't physically abusive with me, but he was getting more aggressive. A few nights ago, he threw an empty whiskey bottle at me because I woke him up when I went to the bathroom. I managed to avoid it, mostly. The base skimmed my shoulder and left a bruise, but it wasn't a serious injury. But if his aggression continued to get worse, I was the only outlet for him to unleash it on. That stress was manifesting in so many ways, but my sleep issues were the most obvious. The most troubling was that I'd started to wet the bed. The last time I experienced that kind of anxiety was when I was being bullied in middle school. I was afraid to go to school every day, and that fear kept me up most of the night. By the time I finally passed out, my prepubescent body was so exhausted and I didn't wake up to go to the bathroom. I'd just sleep in my cooling puddle until my mom woke me up for school and the stench alerted her to what had happened. It was the most mortifying experience of my life, and it was happening again. Back then, me and Mom managed to keep my accidents from my dad by washing my sheets every day while he was at work. But now that he was always home, it was getting harder for me to change my sheets every morning and wash them regularly without causing some suspicion, which was why I was considering a more drastic measure. The box of adult diapers I had delivered to a post office box was the only reasonable solution I could think of. I couldn't just continue to wet myself every night. If nothing else, it was going to start causing rashes on my skin, and I didn't have medical insurance. Besides, the more it happened, the more likely it was that my room would start to smell bad and my dad would figure it out on his own. I'd been leaving the window cracked all night, but it was starting to get cold, and sooner or later, he'd get mad at me for letting the heat out. The package the diapers were shipped in was discreet, but when I looked at the inner wrapper, my shame was on blast from every angle. Instead of choosing the kind you bought at a drugstore that pulled on like real underwear, I went to a kink shop near the diner and bought a brand that adults used for kinky age play, the kind with adhesive enclosures and primary colored trains printed on the front that changed from blue to green after they were wet. I hadn't experimented with age play much, but on the few times I gathered the nerve to visit Primal, the club that hosted themed nights for daddies and littles, diapers were interesting to me. My interest was probably practical because of my sleep issues, but it ran deeper than just for utilitarian purposes. What really drew my attention was watching the mommies and daddies take care of their little partners, changing diapers and offering them snacks and bottles. Maybe it was because the only person in the world who had ever loved me was dead, but I wanted someone to take care of me again, someone to love me again, someone who truly wanted to make me happy. But I had zero delusions that it was going to happen. I wasn't exactly little in height or width, and no good daddy would want me, especially with all my issues. It was gross and humiliating to even consider letting a man see me naked, much less to possibly sleep over and discover my shameful secret. So only when I was alone in my room did I allow myself the occasional indulgence with age regression. Nothing that required a caretaker. Just a few minutes of self-soothing by sucking my thumb or slipping my fingers between my mattress and wall so I could feel the edges of the blankie I had had since I was born. My mom crocheted it when she was pregnant with me and told me stories about how I'd carried it everywhere I went until kindergarten. I'd kept it hidden since I was 10 or 11, so it wasn't in terrible shape. But if Dad knew I still had it, he would destroy it, and that would destroy me. Which led me back to the diapers. Practically speaking, I needed to wear one. My mental health was creating an unhygienic situation for my physical health. Was it even considered a kink if I did it purely to keep my sheets dry? I didn't think so. Most nights I showered before bed to wash the doggy slobber off me. But since the noise would occasionally wake my dad, I didn't want to take the risk. Instead, I just got undressed and did my best to fasten the diaper around my waist, like the diagram on the package said to. It wasn't a great fit, but the leg holes felt tight enough against my skin that they'd hold in any liquid that might fill it during the night. Then I put on a pair of flannel pajamas. They were the last pair my mom gave me on the Christmas before she died. My eyes immediately fluttered closed as I allowed myself to acknowledge how much more relaxed I was with the diaper on. I didn't want to wet it, but if I had an accident, it was a relief to know that I wouldn't have such a mess to deal with. Before I was completely asleep, my thumb managed to slip right into my mouth. It was my favorite self-soothing tactic, but it was also the most damaging. I'd worn braces for 8 years to correct the severe damage thumb-sucking did to my bite as a child. If I allowed myself more than a few minutes of the act as an adult, I was going to end up in an orthodontist's chair once again. Since I didn't want that, and definitely couldn't afford it, I set a vibrating alarm on my phone for 30 minutes out, and then I fell asleep. When the alarm sounded, my hand would reach for it and my thumb would likely not go back in my mouth. At least, that was how it was supposed to happen. Chapter 3. Axel. When the guys went home, they left me with a set of keys and told me I was welcome to come in any time I was free to get started on the work. I think they didn't believe me when I said I would be there all night, but that was exactly what I planned to do. I didn't have city approval on the plans yet, so I couldn't begin anything up in the attic space that would become the new apartment, but I could get the current storage room organized enough to allow Billy to sleep there as soon as tomorrow if he really wanted to. But the facility was already equipped with a unisex bathroom and shower, so at least he had the basics. It wouldn't be private, but it would suffice for the short term. The storage room mostly had boxes of supplies and unassembled kennels that they planned to use once they started boarding. Since boarding was the excuse needed for the apartment, I started on the kennel boxes first. It was close to 2 a.m. when I finally felt satisfied that a comfortable sofa bed and some linens would fit in the space and be enough to provide a crash pad for anyone who needed it. I scooped Kona off the fuzzy bed she had claimed as her own for the evening, and we both headed home, eager to get at least a few hours of sleep before I had to turn right back around and go to work. The next morning, when I was getting ready for the gym, I realized that I'd left the sheet of paper that I had used to sketch out all the measurements of the storage room, so I headed back to the doggy daycare to pick it up. I didn't want to order the wrong size of anything and not be able to use it. With the exact measurements, I could buy a sofa bed on my way over after work. It was only 6 a.m., and I knew the boys didn't usually start accepting drop-offs until 7, so I didn't expect to run into anybody in the building. But a small car was parked at the back of the lot, and when I let myself inside the building, I could hear water running. With Kona waiting for me in the car, I slowly walked around to investigate. Outside the bathroom, I cracked the door enough to hear that someone was in the shower, humming a cheery tune. It was Billy. I had only heard him say a few words over the month or so that I had seen him working here, but there was an unmistakable softness to his voice that I recognized immediately. He was just a cuddlebug that made me want to pull him onto my lap and run my fingers through his hair, and down his back, and straight to... No, I wasn't here to frighten the boy. He obviously thought he was alone, and I didn't want to startle him by appearing unexpectedly when he was fresh out of a shower. Talk about a vulnerable state. The water turned off, and I had to make a decision. As much as I wanted to check in with him, I knew that wasn't my place. Jesse and Jason would be in soon, and they cared deeply about the man. If he was in imminent danger, they'd let us know. So, I grabbed the paper I needed and snuck out the back door, closing it quietly behind me so he never knew I was there. Then, I headed to the builder's store that opened early for account holders. They had everything I needed for the entire project, but today, my priority was getting a bed set up. Roland, a guy I'd originally met at Primal, was working when I went in. He was also a daddy, but we didn't run into each other very often. I mostly knew him from my frequent visits to the store. "Hey, Axel, you skipping a workout to grace us with your presence?" "Hey, man." I laughed and clapped his shoulder. "Yeah, I gotta make a quick pickup before I head to the first job site." He scratched Kona's head and then slipped his hands in his pockets, rocking back on his heels. "The first job site? Geez, do you ever sleep?" "Not nearly enough." And I wasn't exaggerating. I'd always suffered from insomnia, so working out until I was physically exhausted was usually the best way to ensure some rest. But until I had this studio finished and knew Billy was in a safe space, I didn't expect to get in many workouts or much rest. But one job is almost finished, so then I can focus on the other. Anyway, I glanced around the store, looking for the home goods section. I'm looking for a sofa bed I can take with me today. Sure thing. We have several to choose from. Roland turned back the way he had been coming from and started walking. You got some unexpected guests coming to stay with you? If he were staying with me, it wouldn't be in a separate bed. What? Where did that come from? I shook my head. No, setting up a break room/crash pad for one of my clients. They need it sooner rather than later, so I want to get the basics in there today. Cool. We also have linens if you want to pick up sheets and pillows here, so you don't have to buy those separately. I hadn't even thought about those. Good idea. Might as well get everything they'll need, just in case. Roland showed me several sofa bed models, including one that was on clearance because there was a grease mark on the back, so they couldn't sell it as new. It was one of the higher-rated brands, and he'd heard great reviews from customers that owned it. A little bit of grease out will probably take care of the mark. I agreed, and where we planned to put it, no one would ever see it. Yeah, this is good. Can I pick it up after work so it's not in the back of my truck all day? Sure thing. He glanced at his watch. Actually, the delivery truck hasn't left for the day yet. If you want us to just drop it off at the site for you, we can do that. It'll arrive anytime between noon and 4 today. That would be perfect. I should be getting off work sometime around then, so that works out. I was sure I could finish the sheetrock that needed to be hung early if I worked through lunch. That would give me enough time to set up the sofa bed and maybe even see Billy's reaction when the guys told him it was immediately available for his use, in case he didn't want to go home tonight. Chapter 4. Billy. The day went like most other days. I had the water bowls filled and the agility toys set up in the yard before Jesse and Jason showed up. I usually opened up in the morning so they didn't have to rush in, but they had no idea how early I arrived. I didn't bill them for the extra time, but I tried to get out of my house before the sun came up and the chances of my dad waking up increased. I almost ran into Dad on my way out the door, but I managed to slip out the back before he noticed I was awake. It was a good thing I did, because I had been carrying a bag of trash that I couldn't allow him to see. My sleep problem wasn't getting better, but the diaper did its job and contained the mess so my sheets stayed dry, and that allowed me to sleep longer than usual. I almost snoozed my alarm before realizing the cool material on my skin meant I needed to get cleaned up immediately. But as I set out the last batch of dog treats I'd baked over the weekend, the front door opened and Axel walked in with his little dog, Kona. He was the perfect specimen of a man. Axel was tall and buff, with shoulders twice as wide as mine, but made of solid muscle. He worked in construction and was helping the guys make some renovations to the building, but I didn't pay too much attention to the project they had brewing. I had a feeling it had something to do with me being able to stay overnight when we boarded dogs, but I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to get my hopes up, so I tried not to pry whenever it was brought up. What my attention was completely focused on was Axel. He always seemed to seek me out whenever he came into the room. Even better, he always had a ready smile for me. A few times, he'd tried to engage me in small talk, but I always panicked and found a reason to run outside. He probably thought I was completely socially inept. He wouldn't actually be wrong about that, but since I was in the middle of a task right then, I couldn't exactly find a reason to leave everything sitting out while I ran away. And that was why he was able to approach me. When he did, I couldn't help but notice he wasn't as cheery as usual. "Hey there, Billy, how's it going?" "I'm good." Not sure what else to say, I reached for Kona. "I can take her for you. I'm sure you need to get to work." He handed over his dog after dropping a quick kiss on her head. "Thanks." He waved a finger at Kona. "And you be good for Billy and the boys. They don't want to deal with your drama today." Something about the way he said boys made my tummy flutter, and I couldn't help but smile. She's always good for us. A little hyper sometimes, but always good. When I met his gaze again, Axel was staring right at me. "I hope so. And I'll see you around 3 or 4 today? I'll be working in the storage room, and there will be a delivery from me somewhere around that time." I just nodded. Okay, I'll let Jason and Jesse know. Axel stood there for another moment before finally stepping back and then walking out of the building. He seemed to be lingering for a reason, but it was obviously not meant for my ears. Probably something he needed to discuss with Jason and Jesse. As the owners of Doggone Doggy Daycare, they made the decisions. I was just the hired help. The hired help that snuck over to the window and watched Axel's every step until he climbed up into his truck and drove away. Someone has a crush. Jason came up beside me, holding Peaches in his arms. Or should I say, someone's? What are you talking about? I took a step back, shocked that he was suggesting such a thing. I do not. Jason cocked his head and smirked. There's nothing to be ashamed of. He's freaking hot and ripped. That man can bench press you and toss you over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. He wiggled his body as if a shiver had just run down his spine. Hot. Now I laughed. Okay, I'll give you that much. I looked out the window again, as if he might suddenly appear. He's definitely hot, but I don't have a crush on him. Jason just shook his head. Yes, you do. Why can't you at least admit that? He scratched Peaches before putting him on the ground, and then taking Kona from me and doing the same so they could go play. Besides, I think he likes you too. Pfft, okay, now you're being ridiculous. There's no way that man has any interest in me. I think he feels sorry for me. He always seems to walk on eggshells around me. Well, duh. Jason crossed his arms over his chest. Of course he does. Every time he walks in, you go running. He probably thinks you're afraid of his big muscles and gorgeous face. Well, I kinda am. Jason laughed and squeezed my shoulder. You don't have to be afraid of him. He's a good guy. Tony trusts him, which means you can trust him too. That was a fair point. Tony was very protective of Jason and would not let anybody work here without being thoroughly vetted. All I'm saying is he has no interest in me. And even if I did have a tiny crush on him, it wouldn't make a difference. He's just some nice eye candy to appreciate throughout the day. And he definitely was. Which made it even more of a treat when he was back at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to meet a delivery truck. Axel got to flex his big muscles as he helped the driver carry a 3-person sofa from the trunk and into our storage area. I'd noticed the storage area was cleaned out and figured we had a big delivery to make room for, but I was surprised to see it was a couch. We had old chairs and couches throughout the facility for the dogs, so it didn't make sense that they were bringing in a brand new one. But again, whatever they were working on didn't matter as much as who was working on it. And right now, that who was saying goodbye to the delivery driver while rubbing a handkerchief across his forehead. His tight muscles poked out from beneath a t-shirt in the most delicious way. Apparently, I was staring because Jason walked past me and used his index finger to close my mouth, which had been hanging open. When he comes back in, you should ask Axel to show you what he's been working on. I sucked in a breath, shocked he would even suggest such a thing. Are you kidding? I can't do that. It's not my business, and he's busy. He doesn't need me hanging around and apparently drooling over him while he's trying to get stuff done. I turned and looked for a better excuse. Kona. And I should take Kona outside to go potty before he takes her home. Call me if you need me. Before he could say anything else, I scooped up Axel's little dog and we ran outside with a trail of other dogs behind us. Being outside had always been a safe place for me, and that had not changed as I got older. So, like a complete coward, I hid in the backyard, playing with the dogs in order to avoid making a fool out of myself. At least, until Jesse asked me to come inside just before my shift ended. Chapter 5. Axel. Peaches and Kona both wandered in just as I was getting the bed made. I'd picked up both a soft and firm pillow, a complete sheet set, and a beige comforter for the bed. Only the 2 sheets needed to go on the mattress for now, and the pillows and comforter stayed in a sealed bag in the cabinet so they could easily be tucked away until they were needed. Part of me hoped Billy would agree to stay here tonight, but another part of me didn't want his situation to be so dire that he had to leave immediately. Either way, the couch was made up. There was a small side table with drawers he could use for clothes and a lamp with 3 dimmer settings. I'd even picked up a cute little stuffed dog that looked like Peaches, the dog that used to belong to his mom. All right, kids. I looked down at the 2 dogs staring at me. I think we can call this good for tonight. With the temporary sleeping room ready to go, I could start some of the demolition upstairs. I was able to get preliminary approval to start construction during my lunch break today. Fortunately, I had a lot of friends in the city planning department from all the previous projects I'd worked on. And when I'd explained that the project was for a dog daycare that wanted to start overnight boarding, Mallory agreed to fast-track my request. I think she had a little bit of a crush on me, and I wasn't above using that to my advantage. I'd never overtly led her on, but if a little bit of friendly flirting got Billy's apartment done even 1 day earlier, there wasn't any harm done as far as I was concerned. After taking one final look around the storage room and making sure I hadn't forgotten any tools or trash, I went out to the main playroom to find the guys. Jason was checking out some of the guests at the front, so I waited for him to say goodbye to them before I interrupted. "Excuse me, Jay, but I wanted to let you know that the storage room is ready." Jason immediately bounced on his heels, silently clapping his hands together. "I can't believe you got it done so quickly. That's amazing." "Well, it's not much. It's really just a crash pad until things are ready upstairs. But I was assured that the mattress is pretty comfortable, so at least he won't wake up in pain. And there's space for me to plug in the refrigerator and stove on the opposite wall as soon as they come in. Probably this weekend. It'll be a little cramped in there with the bed pulled out, but at least he'll have creature comforts while he's down there." Jason immediately threw himself into my arms and gave me a hug. "You are the best, Axel. You have no idea how much this means to me and Jesse." He pulled back and then gave me a smirk. "Billy's gonna be pretty grateful for it, too." He waggled his eyebrows, as if that was supposed to mean more than what he said. "Okay, well, as long as he's safe." Right then, Jesse and Billy came in from the yard with a couple dogs trailing behind them. Kona was one of them, so I snapped my fingers to get her attention, and she came running to me. "Hey there, Missy. Did you have a good day?" She climbed up me, licking my face and trying to get her tongue into my mouth. If I had my lips parted in the slightest, she liked to lick right inside them. Gross dog. Jesse and Jason exchanged a look before they both broke out into huge grins. I took a step back, leaving this moment to them. They deserved all the credit for doing something thoughtful for their friend and employee. "Billy?" Jesse took the lead, reaching for his friend's hand and walking him toward the storage room. "I know we've talked about you taking some overnight shifts when we start boarding dogs. We're working on a more permanent solution, but for now, Axel has set up the storage room as a place to sleep if you ever need to." He opened the door to the storage room and took a step inside, with Billy right behind him. Billy didn't say a word as he went inside and saw the bed extended in the small space. "We're going to start boarding? Already?" Jason stepped into the room too and put his arm on Billy's opposite shoulder. "We haven't started advertising it yet, but we wanted you to know that this room is available anytime. As soon as tonight. If you want to stay here, it's yours. Anytime you just don't feel like going home or want to have some space to yourself, you're welcome to use it." He turned back to me, and I joined them in the small space. "And Axel said the room upstairs should be done within a few months. We can't officially call it your apartment, but if you want to live in there full time, you're welcome to." Billy was just shaking his head, obviously overcome with emotion. "I don't know what to say." "No pressure." Jesse was quick to put an arm around Billy. "You don't ever have to use this room, and you're not obligated to do any overnights here either. We haven't even started telling our clients about that service. But since you mentioned that things can get tense with your dad sometimes, we thought you might like to have an alternate sleeping arrangement sometimes. Or all the time, or never." He took a deep breath and looked Billy in the eye. "Just know that it's here if you need it." A soft sob broke through Billy's throat as he almost tumbled into Jesse's arms, holding him in a big hug while Jason completed their little circle by embracing him from the back. I stepped out of the room to give them some privacy, and to make sure the moisture that had welled up in my eyes didn't seep out. Billy had a safe space. That was all that mattered. The fact that I wanted to pull him into my arms and protect him from the world was purely instinctive. At least, that was what I tried to convince myself of as I looked out over the backyard with Kona still in my arms. A few minutes later, Billy appeared at my side. He cleared his throat and spoke more words to me than I'd ever heard from him. "Thank you for doing this for me, Axel. You have no idea how much I appreciate it." I turned and immediately got locked into his gaze. "It was Jesse and Jason's idea. I'm just the muscle." I grinned to let him know I was teasing. But his eyes immediately went to my biceps, and then to my chest, and then lower. Interesting. Maybe he wasn't as immune to my physique as he led me to believe. I'd been half-heartedly trying to get this kid's attention for a month, but he always disappeared from any room I entered. I was beginning to get a complex about it. "They told me how quickly you jumped into action, and it means a lot to me. Things have been getting stressful at home, and I didn't have anywhere else to go, so thanks." I wanted to pull him into an embrace, but that felt like overstepping. I had to settle for placing my hand on his shoulder and giving him a gentle squeeze. "I'm happy to help, and if you ever need anything, day or night, please know you can give me a call. Kona and I spend most of our evenings eating takeout and watching TV, so you'll never be interrupting anything." He sucked his lower lip between his teeth and nodded. "Thanks." I could have stood there staring at him all day, but I still had more work to do. I let the boys finish up with the last of the dogs while Kona and I went upstairs to begin the demo work. There wasn't a lot I could do without materials, but I began pulling down the walls so I could measure for insulation and wiring. We needed a lot more power outlets up here, and an additional circuit box to handle a full-size refrigerator and electric stove. From what I understood, Billy had trained to become a baker, and I wanted to make sure he had what he needed to pursue that passion. Chapter 6. Billy. I was completely overwhelmed when I realized what everyone had done for me. They were spending so much time and money, and they barely knew me. No one had ever done anything like that for me before, and I didn't really know how to respond. I just had to hope that my few words of thanks were enough to convey how much I truly appreciated their kindness. But I would probably spend the rest of my life trying to repay them for what they'd done. And not just Jason and Jesse and their partners, but also Axel. He was getting paid for the project, but I could tell that he actually cared about doing a good job and providing a nice place for me. He'd been in that room for hours, and when I realized he had been making the bed and putting the pillows in pillowcases, well, those small finishing touches did not go unnoticed. Maybe I could make him some cookies at some point, or dinner, and breakfast. Whoa, where did that come from? The guys had put such crazy ideas into my head that now, instead of fantasizing about my one-sided crush on Axel, I was allowing myself to imagine that he might have the smallest bit of interest in me too. It was easy to do when he looked at me like I was the most important person in the room. And although I'd been denying it, he really did look at me like that. It made my stomach ball up into a knot every time, because I was always waiting for him to realize I wasn't good enough for him. If he did actually have any interest in me, surely it was because he hadn't gotten a good look at me. He hadn't realized how soft I was around the middle, or how painfully shy I could be around strangers. I had no right to even fantasize about being with a guy like Axel, but that didn't stop me from doing it. After leaving work, I was so excited by my little sleeping quarters that I didn't pay attention to how early it was when I got home. Instead of driving around the city and stalling for a few hours, I picked up a couple burgers and went straight home. Bad move. Dad was awake and mad that I didn't bring any food for him. I offered to give him my dinner, but he didn't like the burgers from that place. He liked their chicken sandwiches. That was why he grabbed the bag I offered him and threw it on the ground before stomping on it as if it were a flaming bag of crap. "I can go get you something now," I said softly as I backed out of the room. It'll just take a few minutes." "Forget it. I don't need anything from you. You think you're better than me because you go to work every day and have a paycheck, but you're not. You're the same baby you've always been." He had more to say, but I closed the door to my room without hearing most of it. Maybe tonight was the night I started sleeping at work. The guys made it clear that I was welcome, and they went to so much trouble to get it ready for me. It didn't make any sense to continue to suffer his insults if I had another option. I only took a few more seconds to make the decision, and before I talked myself out of it, I was shoving my work clothes and essentials into my large duffel bags. I reached for my backpack in the corner of my closet, but hesitated. The package of diapers were hidden in that bag, and I wasn't sure if I should take them with me. On the one hand, I couldn't risk messing up the sheets at work since there was no way for me to easily wash them. On the other hand, what if somebody saw them? I would absolutely die. There was no way I could overcome that kind of humiliation. I'd have to leave town and completely start over with a new identity. I didn't see a reasonable solution. On the shelf in my closet, there was an old sleeping bag that I used the one time my dad took me camping. Not exactly sure what the plan was, I hooked it up to the backpack, grabbed my blankie from between the mattress and the wall, and shoved as many socks and underwear as I could on top of everything else in the backpack. After I walked out that front door, there was a good chance I would never be welcomed back in this house again. Really, I wasn't welcome in the house right now. It took an hour for my dad to finally go to the bathroom, but as soon as he did, I quickly made a run for it. He might not even notice I was gone for a while, maybe never, and I would probably never miss him either. When I got back to work, Axel's truck was still in the lot, and I could see a light on up in the attic. It was almost 9, and I felt a twinge of guilt that he was working so late. But I also liked the flutter in my belly that happened whenever I thought about Axel doing nice things for me. I was tempted to go upstairs and see if he needed any help, but I was also a little self-conscious about being there. Besides, I didn't want him to ask me questions about why I wasn't staying at home, so I quietly slipped into the storage room and got myself settled in. Having such an emotional day left me exhausted, and after I finally tested out the mattress, I almost passed out right then. But I couldn't risk falling asleep without taking preventative measures. Even though my body felt like it weighed 1,000,000 pounds, I forced myself to get up and use the bathroom. I took my toiletries bag to brush my teeth and wash my face, but I wasn't sure what to do about my actual sleeping time. Back in the storage room, I unrolled the sleeping bag and put it on top of the mattress. If I did have an accident, it would be in the bag and I could easily take it to a laundromat after work. But that didn't completely settle my concerns. Ideally, I should wear a diaper too, just to fully contain any messes. But then there was a risk that someone would see me. What if there was a fire and I had to run outside in my sleep clothes? No, I couldn't do it. But after lying in the sleeping bag for almost an hour, I knew there was no way I would get a good night's sleep without the extra protection of the diaper. So, ignoring all the risks of my most shameful secret being revealed, I flipped on the lamp, dug out a diaper from the bottom of my backpack, and dropped my jammy pants to put it on. It wasn't the easiest thing to do while standing up. They were made to be put on by a partner, so trying to hold the diaper between my legs as I squatted so the seal around my legs were tight while positioning the adhesive tabs in just the right spot that they didn't pull off when I moved, or cut off my circulation when I sat down, was quite a feat. And just when I thought I had it on correctly, the tab released again and one side flopped open. "Ah!" I cried out in frustration, too tired to concentrate but desperate to make it work. Seconds later, the door to the storage room flew open and Axel was standing there, staring down at me as I wrestled with a choo-choo train diaper and snowflake sleep pants pooled around my ankles. We both froze, not sure what to do or say. He recovered first, doing his best to play it cool. "Sorry, Billy. I didn't realize you were here, and then I heard you scream." He spun on his heels so his back was facing me. "Is there anything you need? Can I, help you?" "Please, no." I wanted to die. Like, seriously melt into a puddle and never look at him again. "Axel, I grabbed the sleeping bag and wrapped it around me. Please don't tell anyone. I'm so sorry. What else could I say? There were no words to convey the mortification flowing through me. Nothing could make my situation okay. I was a disgusting baby, and now the sexiest man I'd ever met had witnessed it. Just please don't tell anyone. I dropped onto the floor with the sleeping bag covering my middle. Then I pulled it over my face so he couldn't see the tears of humiliation pouring down my cheeks. He was probably disgusted by what he'd just witnessed, regretting all the nice things he had done for me. I'm so sorry. Chapter 7. Axel. OMG. Billy's wearing a diaper. It took a few minutes for my brain to catch up to what my eyes had witnessed. I wasn't shocked by the diaper itself. As a daddy, I'd participated in many scenes with little ones who used diapers or training pants. That part was totally normal for me. What was shocking was that Billy was wearing one, by himself. Diapers were generally reserved for scenes that involved at least two partners. Not only was attaching one a bit of a hassle without a second person, but the cleanup could also be a nightmare if they were actually used. But more than anything, the way Billy completely broke down was what got me in the ticker. Even though I turned my back to him as quickly as I could to give him the illusion of privacy, I could sense that he had collapsed on the floor and was sobbing as if something terrible had just happened. I knew in my gut that he wanted me to leave him alone so he could wallow in embarrassment for what he perceived as shameful. But I couldn't do it. There was nothing shameful about him being caught in a diaper. Whether he needed it for physical or emotional reasons was his business. But I couldn't allow him to think I had lost respect for him or had any ill will toward him. Nothing could be further from the truth. If anything, I was even more drawn to him as a daddy, because he was clearly a lost boy who needed to be loved. I was trying to come up with a plan of action when he had the nerve to apologize to me. That was when my resolve to be strong dropped, and I rounded on him. Billy was balled up on the cold floor with a sleeping bag covering him as he tried to muffle his cries. I'm so sorry, Axel. Please forgive me. Please don't tell. I dropped onto the floor beside him and wrapped my arms around his curled-up form until I was sure I knew where his head and bottom were. And then I lifted him up and placed him right on my lap. Leaning against the side of the bed, I held him as he continued to hide beneath the blanket. A few minutes passed before his crying slowed down and morphed into stuttering breaths. Billy? I gently rocked him in my arms, doing my best to soothe him. Why did you apologize to me? He choked out a soft sob and curled away from me, probably burying his face in his hands, even though he was completely hidden from me. I'm so embarrassed. I know it's disgusting. I'm disgusting, and you've all been so nice to me. He started shaking again as a new round of tears began to flow. This time, I couldn't just sit silently and allow him to beat himself up. Shh, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. I dug around through the sleeping bag until I found the edge and carefully pulled it over his head until I could see him. No need for tears, baby. You're not disgusting or any less adorable than you were before I walked in here like a complete jerk, totally disregarding your privacy. He stilled in my arms, soaking in my words. I'm not adorable. Yes, you are. I couldn't resist pressing a kiss to the side of his head, breathing in his warm scent and shampoo. And it might surprise you to know that I kinda like boys who wear diapers. But it's true. What? Now he looked right at me, probably judging my sincerity. Why? I shrugged and used the cuff of my hoodie to wipe the streaks of tears off his cheeks. I don't know why, but I do. It's a kink that I'm not ashamed of, and whether your diaper is a kink or just a personal choice is nothing to be ashamed of either. He swallowed hard and then dropped his chin to his sternum. It's kinda both, I guess. Well, okay then. Now we were getting somewhere. There were a million questions on the tip of my tongue, but now didn't seem like the right time to dig into his emotional state. He was obviously exhausted and needed some rest before we could have a real conversation. May I help you get ready for bed, Billy? He slowly lifted his head and finally looked me in the eye. Do you really mean it? You're not disgusted by me or what you saw? Not in the least. I cupped the side of his face and brushed a rogue tear away with my thumb. In fact, I'm inappropriately happy right now, but that's a discussion for another night. Tonight, I'd be honored if you allowed me to help you get ready for bed, and maybe sit with you for a little while until you fall asleep. And then maybe we can grab dinner tomorrow evening to talk some more. Okay. His eyes were still guarded, but at least there wasn't the same self-loathing I heard from him earlier. That would be nice. I smiled and tapped his hip. Okay, then let's get you all snuggled up in bed. I shifted my weight to my knees and easily lifted him up onto the bed. First, let's make sure that diaper is properly attached. Billy sucked in a deep breath and screwed his eyes shut as if he didn't want me to say the word. Billy? I said his name softly at first, but when he didn't relax, I used a firmer tone. Billy, please look at me. He pursed his lips together, but opened his eyes and met my gaze. I didn't want anyone to find out. I can respect that, baby. I rested my hands on both of his shoulders and then slid them up his neck until I was cradling his head. And I'm so sorry I came in without knocking first. That was my mistake, and I promise never to do that again. But it happened, and now that I know you need help, I'd like to help. Are you? He bit his lip and looked away. A daddy? Like Tony and Harris? A flood of relief that he was familiar with the daddy-boy dynamic filled me. At least he had some frame of reference for what I was about to do. Yes, I am. I guess you've talked to Jesse and Jason about their relationships. He nodded. Yeah, I know they have daddies and are good boys. He grinned shyly. Well, Jason isn't always good, but Tony loves him even when he's a brat. Yes, he does. I exhaled and nodded, happy that he had people to talk to. Have you talked to them about your interest in their relationships? No, Billy pulled away for a second and then relaxed. I mean, they know I'm jealous of them, and they've teased me about having a crush on you. But I knew you wouldn't be interested in someone like me, especially with my problem. He pointed to his crotch and the still hidden diaper. Considering I'd just told him we would have a deeper conversation tomorrow, I wanted to pull back a bit and give us both some time to process before going any further. First of all, I don't consider anything I've learned tonight to be a problem. Second of all, I'm somewhat of an expert at making diapers fit comfortably, so if you're okay with letting me help you, I'd like to do so. Billy took a deep breath and then released the sleeping bag he'd been clutching tightly around his body. His eyes drifted closed, but without as much discomfort as they did earlier. That was progress, as far as I was concerned. How about you lie back so we can get you comfy? I gently pressed his shoulder back until he was lying on the mattress. Then, in a fairly clinical manner without any hint of inappropriate interest, I fastened both sides of his diaper and carefully ran my finger along the inner elastic that aligned both legs to make sure the seal was tight. Lift your bottom. I tugged his pants all the way up to his waist and then smoothed down his shirt as he relaxed back onto the mattress. Do you have any other comfort items you sleep with? A stuffy, maybe? He bit his lip and glanced at the backpack beside the side table. I have a blanket that my mom made when I was a baby. Okay. I placed my hand on his and gave it a squeeze. Can I get that for you? It's in my backpack. He scooted up to the middle of the bed and wrapped the sleeping bag around his body so he was cocooned in it. I found the small blanket buried under his clothes and brought it back to him. Is there anything else I can get for you? Do you need some water? No, thank you. Billy tucked the blanket under his chin and held both ends of the sleeping bag tightly around him. But if you'd like to stay for a while, that's okay with me. You don't have to, but I might fall asleep faster if you do. That was music to my ears. Then I'd be happy to sit with you. But do you mind if I go up and grab Kona? She's probably wondering where I disappeared to. Yes, please. He finally perked up, like that was exactly what he was waiting for. Kona can sleep with me. And then he slipped his thumb into his mouth and closed his eyes. It was nice to see a smile on his face, and even cuter around his thumb. After the highs and lows he'd just experienced, I'd give just about anything to make him smile, including my dog for the night. Chapter 8. Billy. When I woke up the next morning, I expected to feel the intense weight of my shame again. But it wasn't there. What was there was Kona. Axel left his dog with me so I would sleep better. And when I poked at the front of my pants, I realized it was dry. I didn't wet the bed. Kona had cured me. Or maybe it was Axel. Probably both. Kona woke up and began licking my face, ready to go potty and have her breakfast. Okay, girl, let me get dressed and we'll go out. It was a lot easier to take the diaper off when it was dry, so I quickly shrugged out of it and slipped on a pair of regular boxers, then balled up the diaper as tightly as I could before hiding it inside a dark green dog poop bag and then slipping it into the trash. After getting dressed for the day, I took Kona out to the yard and got a bowl of food for her. We had a supply of food on hand for all our dogs, in case they ever needed to stay late or got sick and needed to eat in the middle of the day. When I got back to my new room, I realized there was a note sticking out of the top of my backpack. My tummy fluttered as I pulled out the note and read it. I hope you and Kona slept well. I'll be back at around 6. If you need me before then, please call. I can be there in 5 minutes. Axel. I checked my phone and realized it was 10 minutes to 6. Okay, Kona. Daddy will be back in a few minutes. Let's get cleaned up before then. I grabbed my toiletries and went to the bathroom for a very quick shower and to brush my teeth. When I came back out, dressed and ready for the day, Axel had a box of bagels and schmears set out along the counter. Oh, hi. Good morning, Billy. Axel looked at me with the same adoring eyes he'd always reserved for me. Did you sleep well? Yeah. I pushed down my fears and insecurities and pretended like the embarrassing parts of last night never happened. We both passed out and just woke up a few minutes ago. I'm glad to hear it. He waved toward the bagel spread. I brought breakfast. They look delicious. And if I didn't hate eating in front of people, I would have devoured at least 2. But I couldn't handle the judgment that I always felt when eating. I'm fine for now, but thank you. Why? I was about to turn away and get started with my morning routine when Axel's question stopped me short. Why what? Why don't you want to eat? He cocked his head, giving me the same firm stare that I'd seen Tony and Harris level their boys with. If you did sleep through the night, like you said, then you should be hungry by now. Oops. I couldn't tell him the truth, but I'd never been good at coming up with lies on the spot. It's just that, well, I had a big dinner, so I'm still full from that. It was at that moment that I remembered that I didn't eat dinner at all. After my dad trashed my food, I was so focused on getting out of there that I didn't even think about getting anything else. And then, the whole situation with Axel happened. Unfortunately, my stomach seemed to also remember that it was empty and chose that moment to growl angrily. Billy? His tone was different now that he'd caught me in a lie. Why don't you want to eat? Ugh, he knew, and he was gonna make me say it out loud. Okay, I'm a little hungry, but I'm trying to cut back on carbs. That was mostly a lie, but if he was going to continue to look at me like that, I definitely needed to figure out how to drop 30 or 50 pounds. I would never look like Axel, but maybe I could look less like me. I'll get a salad for lunch. That should be fine. Nope. And just like that, he tilted the tray of bagels up so I could see them. Plain, everything, or blueberry? Plain. I really was hungry, so if he was going to make me eat, at least I was going to have what I liked. With plain cream cheese. Okay then. He opened the bagel and smeared a generous dollop of cream cheese on both sides, and then handed the top half to me with a napkin. Have one half first. If you're truly full after that, you don't have to eat the other half. But if you decide you do want it, it'll be right here for you. I took a bite of the bagel and couldn't help the way my eyes fluttered closed in pleasure. It was so good. When I opened my eyes again, Axel was grinning. Glad you like it. Thank you. It's really good. He merely nodded and made a bagel for himself while I got started with the morning setup. By the time Jason and Jesse arrived, Kona and I were already playing fetch outside, and Axel was on his way to work with the promise of stopping by around lunchtime to check on another delivery he was expecting. I believed that he was coming back for something related to the job he was hired to do, but a tiny part of my heart wondered if maybe he was coming back to check on me, to make sure I was still okay and see if I needed anything. No one had ever done that before, but it felt like something that Axel would do for people he cared about. What my brain wasn't completely ready to believe was that I could be one of those people too. Chapter 9. Axel. I wasn't sure what to expect when I showed up at the daycare with the bagels, but what I didn't expect was for Billy to refuse to eat. At first, I wondered if maybe he really was full from a big dinner, but that didn't track if what everything else he'd said was true. And when his stomach growled, I knew he was lying. Honestly, that hurt. It shouldn't have. I had no right to demand answers from him, but I did, and he kinda gave me one. Not the real one or a complete one, but I believed that he did feel some insecurity about his body or his weight and wanted to diet. What he didn't understand is that I loved his body. He was soft and round in all the right places, exactly the way I liked my boys. Just because I spent hours in the gym and had a bodybuilder's physique, that didn't mean I was attracted to that body type in others. I wasn't. Not at all. I was attracted to Billy, every inch of him, and I needed to do a better job of getting that message to him. Eventually. Today, we needed to both take a breath and process the previous 24 hours. When I stopped in at lunchtime, I was happy to see him laughing with Jessie at the way the dogs were zooming around the yard. It never failed that as soon as one started running wild, the others would jump in and take chase, creating a whirlwind of fur that was hilarious to witness. Jason was helping a new client get set up, but he held up a finger to get my attention, so I waited for them to get finished and then I stepped up to him. "What's up?" He smiled and shook his head. "I don't know what was happening before last night, but Billy is like a whole new person. He's been smiling all day and rolling around on the ground with the dogs. I've never seen him so relaxed." He shrugged and held out his hand to shake mine. "Thank you again for working so quickly to get that room finished. He really needed it." As much as I wanted to take credit for the room, I wasn't sure that was it. A selfish part of me hoped that he got more than just a safe space to sleep last night. Maybe my attention and care filled a void within him that he needed to be filled. "I'm happy to hear he's having such a great day." "He really is." Jason nodded toward the back and laughed. "I mean, look at him. He's actually crawling on the lawn with Peaches on his back." I laughed too, an unexpected sense of pride and joy bursting inside me. "He's amazing." Jason slowly turned to look at me, then clicked his tongue. I knew it. Knew what? I raised an eyebrow, curious what he was referring to. "You like him." He used a sing-song voice that I knew was the preamble of his bratty side shining through. "And he likes you." I grinned, unable to deny my feelings. "Yeah? You know that for a fact?" "Oh yeah." He danced around me, circling me but staying just out of reach when I tried to give him a noogie. Jason had become like a little brother to me, sometimes an annoying little brother, and he wants you to be his daddy. Did he say that? All jokes aside, if that was something they had talked about, I wanted to know. Jason just smirked and scooted closer to the back door. "That's for me to know and you to find out." "Dang, boy!" I checked my watch and then took a final look outside before going into the storage room to get the fridge in place and plugged in. I had to get back to the other job site, but I really wanted Billy to have access to food and drinks without having to order in for every meal. I just hoped Billy was still on board for dinner with me. Many questions had been answered the night before, but even more had come up. Chapter 10. Billy. After every dog had been picked up except Kona, I jumped in the shower, just in case Axel still wanted to go to dinner tonight. When he didn't say hi to me at lunchtime, I was both disappointed and relieved. Disappointed because I really wanted to see him, but kinda relieved because I didn't want to do anything that would scare him away. Not that he shouldn't have been scared away last night after finding me the way he did. But he wasn't scared at all. He didn't even seem bothered by the diaper. He said he was turned on by it. And if that was true, maybe the other stuff he said was true too. And he continued to help me by installing a full-size fridge in my little room. It was a bit cramped, but knowing that he wanted to make sure I had access to snacks and food that I could cook meant the world to me. Everything that was happening was all so hard to believe. Like the best kind of dream that just got better and better, and I tried to ignore the part about me eventually having to wake up. I just didn't want this feeling to ever go away. When I got out of the shower, Axel was there, waiting for me with a single rose and Kona on his lap. That was when I allowed myself to have some actual hope. "Hey there." He stood up and handed the rose to me. "This is for you." I bit my lip and accepted the gift. "Thank you." "Are you still up for dinner tonight?" He ran his finger along my jawline. "Because I'd love to take you out." "Sure." I could still feel his finger on my skin even after he'd moved it away. I could eat. His eyes lit up like that was everything to him. "That's what I like to hear. Where are we going? I mostly have work clothes, nothing nice." Axel's eyes roamed down my body and then back up. "You look pretty good right now." "I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I can probably find a better shirt at least." He shrugged. "I think you look great, and you'll be fine just about anywhere. But if you'd like to change, go ahead. Just know that I think you're perfect." I could feel my cheeks pinking up, but I didn't break eye contact. "Oh, thanks. In that case, I guess I can just wear this." I slipped my hands into my pockets and glanced up at him. "I'm ready when you are." "Let's go." Axel slipped his arm behind my back and gently guided me out the front door. My boy needs to be fed. As foreign as it felt to be cared for, I wasn't going to keep questioning his intentions. I couldn't control whether Axel would like me for more than a day or a week or a year, but as long as he was willing to say sweet things and show me the kind of affection I'd never experienced before, I was going to just enjoy it. Lead the way. Daddy. It was on the tip of my tongue, but I held it in. He wasn't my daddy, and I wasn't his boy. I wanted both to be true, but until he said the words, I wasn't going to back him into any corners. We ended up at a casual steakhouse that was delicious. I hadn't been there in years, but the food was just as good as I remembered. About halfway through the meal, Axel brought up the conversation that I knew was about to happen, but I was still nervous about it. "Are you ready to talk about last night?" I glanced around to make sure none of the people at other tables were close enough to hear us talking. They weren't, and there was music playing that drowned out all but the loudest conversations, so I felt safe agreeing. "Yes, I think so." "Okay. Can you start with what happened at home that made you decide to stay at work?" He reached over and placed his hand over mine. "Unless you need to skip that part for now." I had been tapping my thumb on the tabletop, but the weight of his hand stilled me. I flashed a grateful smile and then sucked in a breath. "My dad drinks a lot. Since my mom died about a year ago, he's been a mess, lost his job, and has just been spiraling into a pit of depression." Axel squeezed my hand and murmured, "I'm sorry." I dipped my chin to nod in acknowledgement, but kept going, unable to make eye contact, but ready to just spit it all out at once. "Anyway, he basically hates me. He barely tolerated me when my mom was around. And now that she isn't around anymore, I can't do anything right." I shrugged with indifference. "Most of the time, I can avoid him, but it's really stressful to be around him. Last night, he was awake when I got home instead of passed out in front of the TV. He was mad that I didn't bring him the food that he likes, and then said something about me thinking I'm better than him because I have a job. It's all nonsense, but when I thought about it, I realized I didn't have to stay there and walk on eggshells anymore. Since you and the guys set up the storage room for me, I actually had an option." I shrugged and finally looked at him. "And I decided to take it." "I'm glad you did." Axel's thumb slid across my knuckles in an almost subconscious way. I didn't know if he realized he was doing it, but I loved it and hoped he wouldn't stop. And I really enjoyed getting to spend time with you last night. So did I said softly. Yeah? His sexy smirk was back, but it didn't last long before he got serious again. I know I already apologized for walking in without knocking, but again, I'm sorry, and I really hated seeing you so upset after. Do you feel better about all that? I bit my lower lip and looked away for a moment, honestly asking myself how I felt. It was humiliating, and I kinda wished I could go back in time and undo it. But on the other hand, it was so nice to have Axel take care of me. That feeling of being cared for easily outmatched the embarrassment. Yeah, I am. It means a lot to me that you didn't make me feel bad about my situation, and that you helped me. His hand slipped underneath mine, curling around the inside of my palm instead of just resting on top of it. I loved helping you, and I'm happy to do that again, if you'll let me. I wanted to say yes 1,000,000 times. I wanted to jump up and down and throw my arms around him and beg him to stay forever. But it just didn't make sense to me. Instead of voicing any of my insecurities, I just nodded as my gaze drifted down to our connected hands. Billy? Axel's voice was deeper now. He used that firm daddy voice that I couldn't ignore. I'm gonna ask this of you now, and I hope I don't have to keep reminding you, but I do expect you to be honest with me. When I ask you a question, I want you to tell me the truth, and I'll do the same to you. But I can't read your mind, and I can't take care of you if I don't know what you need. My throat began to burn with emotion, so I cleared it quickly and did my best to be honest with him. Okay, yes, I would love for you to help me. I shrugged one shoulder, shy to say the words, but resolved to get it out. And for you to take care of me. But I don't understand why you would want to. Is it just because you're a daddy and you can see how desperate I am for affection? Or is it some sense of obligation to your friends? I just can't understand. Why me? His gaze softened as he cocked his head. Why not you, baby? You're sweet and kind and sexy. You know enough about daddy kink to not be afraid of it. I keep learning new things about you that I really like. So, if it's something you want to explore with me, I definitely want to explore that with you. That tiny bit of hope I had been trying to contain started to expand, and I feared I wouldn't be able to rein it in at all. But I'm not sexy. Not like you. Do you think I want to date myself? Axel chuckled. I like boys who are sweet and cuddly and have a dimple in their right cheek. He waggled his eyebrows at me, making me blush again. Instinctively, my fingers went up to the dimple in my cheek that was the mirror image of my mom's. Oh, I thought that because I'm not like Jason and Jesse. I let my words die off, not sure how to end that sentence. Axel sighed, and then scooted his chair around the table so it was right beside mine. Then, he placed his arm across my shoulders and tucked me to his side. Jesse and Jason are great. They're perfect boys for their daddies, but they're not perfect for me. He kissed the side of my forehead, holding his lips against my hair for a long moment. Now, I don't know that you'll be perfect for me, or I'll be perfect for you, but I do know that you're exactly the kind of boy I want to have. If I'm the kind of daddy you want to have, then maybe we can see where this goes. He wanted me, just as I was, without having to change anything. It was hard for me to believe, but I had no reason not to trust him. Axel had been nothing but honest with me so far, and his actions further backed up his words. I'd like that too. I turned and looked right at him, bringing my nose to just millimeters away from his. We were close enough to kiss, but I wasn't going to make the first move. I had never actually been kissed, so I had no idea what to expect. When Axel closed the distance and gently brushed his lips across mine, my whole body felt like it was on fire. Every nerve ending seemed to radiate energy. Not sure what else to do, I pulled my hand onto my lap, simultaneously clenching the front of my shirt while attempting to hide what he had caused. Axel pulled back a tiny bit, and then dropped one more chaste kiss onto the side of my mouth before kissing my temple and then my forehead. But we'll take it slow. I can tell that this is new for you, and I think this will be new for me too. I shifted my weight so I could get a better look at his face. What do you mean? You've done this before, right? He tilted his head and offered a single-shouldered shrug. I've been in relationships with boys before, yes, but they were more for occasional scenes and group play. The few boys I had when I was younger weren't into any kind of kink, which is probably why things didn't work out for us. Oh, his kinks are deal breakers. Good to know. So, what kind of kinks are you into? Excellent question. Axel smiled and ran his fingers through my hair. If I could build my own relationship, I think it would be similar to the dynamic that Jason and Tony share. I would like a full-time boy that allows me to take care of him, but wouldn't have to call me daddy all the time. Though I do prefer it in the bedroom. My breath hitched, and my heart started to race with the confirmation that he was looking for more than just caretaking with me. I just nodded to keep him talking. The specific details aren't as important for me. What do you mean by that? I didn't have much experience with kink. I'd only visited Primal a few times and was mostly a voyeur on the sidelines. But it seemed like the details were the most important part of any relationship. Axel took a drink of his beer and leaned back in his chair, contemplating his words. For instance, if my boy wanted or needed to use diapers, that's fine. Or not. Bottles versus sippy cups, pacifiers versus suckling. He grinned and winked at me. It only took a few seconds before I felt my face bloom with heat as I realized what he meant by that. Really, as long as I have a good connection with my boy, and he allows me to fulfill at least some of my caretaking instincts, I think the rest can be worked out organically. I willed my eyes to stay dry as I imagined living the life he just described. I'd never put a lot of thought into what kind of relationship I wanted to have, because I never expected to have one. Not one where I was the center of anyone's world. But everything that Axel said sounded like heaven to me. I don't know if I need or want all those things, but I'm open to trying them all, with you. Axel pulled me against his chest and embraced me tightly, as if he thought I might not agree to trying. That makes me very happy to hear, baby. You make me very happy. I dropped my head against his shoulder and sighed. I couldn't remember ever making anybody but my mother happy. It felt good to hear it. Chapter 11. Axel. After dinner, Billy and I went for a walk downtown and got ice cream cones. According to Billy, it was actually gelato, but it tasted like ice cream to me. With our cones in our hands, we turned into the park and walked along the lake. As the breeze got cooler, he inched closer and closer to my side. By the time we made it back to my truck, he was pressed tightly against me, soaking up the body heat that seemed to radiate off me no matter what the weather was outside. True to my word that I wanted to take things slow, we headed back to the doggy daycare to drop him off. Also, I still had a lot of work to do there. Kona had behaved like a champ under the table at the restaurant and while we walked, but I could tell that she was tired and ready for bed. So, while Billy washed up, I put one of the small dog beds on the floor near his bed so she could stay with him while I worked. I was in his room with the door open, kneeling next to Kona and reminding her to behave, when I heard Billy shuffle in behind me. I stood up and turned, almost losing my breath when I saw him wearing a clean t-shirt and a towel wrapped around his waist. So many images of what was underneath that towel went through my mind. But I managed to keep a completely straight face and my eyes on his so as not to spook him. Are you all cleaned up and ready for bed? Billy clutched both ends of the towel at his hip and nodded. Yes, but can you help me again? Of course. I kept my tone even so it didn't seem like what he was asking for was out of the ordinary. Why don't you sit on the bed and tell me where I can find everything? Billy's eyes dropped to his lap, but he pointed to the opposite side of the bed. My backpack is under the bed over there. I dug around under the bed until I found it and brought it up onto the mattress near him. And my pajamas are in the top drawer. He pointed to the side table. Since his pajamas were put away, I assumed that the diapers were in his backpack. When I opened it up, I instantly recognized the package as being a brand specifically sold for kink rather than adult incontinence. Just another bit of information to file away. With the backpack still open, I looked up at Billy. Is there anything else you need? Maybe powder or cream? He shook his head before finally looking up at me. I've never used those before. Do I need to? If you haven't gotten any rashes, then maybe not. But if you'd like, I can pick some up for tomorrow. Billy opened his mouth like he had something to say, but immediately closed it before clearing his throat. If you'd like to try that, I'm okay with it too. Then it's settled. I didn't want him to do things just for my sake, but I could sense that he was as curious as I was. So, I accepted the authority he gave me to make those kinds of experimentation decisions for him. And if he changed his mind at any point along the way, I was totally fine with that. I just didn't want him not to experience something he might enjoy because he was self-conscious about what I'd think of him. How about you lie back and I'll get this on you? I held up the diaper and waited for his reaction. It would be the first time I saw him naked from the waist down, and I didn't take that moment lightly. But I also didn't make a big deal out of it. Not until it was about nakedness rather than just meeting his needs. After a few seconds, Billy released the death grip he had on the towel and let his hands fall to his sides. Keeping the moment chaste and more clinical than anything else, I opened up the diaper and stretched it out so I could easily slide it in place. Would you like me to remove the towel and put it on you, or would you like to get it in place while I turn my back, and I'll just help with the tape? His eyes were glued to mine as he seemed to be studying me. You can do it. Holding my breath to not give away how excited I was, I pulled the towel away from his front and asked him to lift his bottom so I could slide the diaper beneath him. With just a few simple folds, it was securely in place and the seams along both of his thighs were properly sealed. Now it's jammy time. I grabbed the pajama pants and balled up the fabric of the right leg in my hand so he could easily slide his right foot in, and then repeated that with the other leg before I slid them up his body and over the puffy diaper. There we go. Thank you. Billy kept his eyes averted, as if some of his insecurities were creeping back in. I reached out to help him into a sitting position. I like the trains you picked. This kind that changes color is pretty cool. Billy stilled for a moment before his body relaxed. Yeah, it was either trains or rocket ships. I like these better. Good choice. I picked up the pajama shirt and held it up. Do you want to sleep in your t-shirt or your pajama shirt? He thought about it for just a split second before raising his arms. Pajamas. I pulled the t-shirt off him and quickly helped him get into the soft sleeping shirt so he matched in the same snowflake set he wore the night before. You look so cute. I dropped a kiss onto the top of his head. I just want to cuddle with you. Okay. Billy scooted up high enough on the bed that he could slide under the top sheet. I'm ready. Do you want your sleeping bag tonight? He looked over to the chair where the sleeping bag was neatly folded. Yeah, you're probably right. I probably should, just in case. Then he looked up at me and shrugged. But I didn't wet last night. I didn't want to congratulate him because I didn't want to make him feel bad about when he did wet. At least, not until I understood what the reason was. Well, it's up to you, sweetheart. If you'd like to sleep in the sheets, I can put the comforter on top of you. I pointed to the cabinet that the comforter was tucked away in. Or I can zip you up in the sleeping bag like last night. Which do you prefer? Billy crawled back out from under the sheet. Let's use the sleeping bag again. I don't want to have an accident on this bed. I grabbed the sleeping bag and shook it out so it was flat on the mattress for him to climb on top of. Do you usually wet when you sleep? Not always. Billy looked over at Kona and then tapped the bed, calling her to jump up and sit with him. I did it when I was a kid for a little while, and it just started up again a few weeks ago. Chapter 12. Billy. I thought it would be harder to open up to Axel, but he made it so easy to just be myself, like I'd known him for a lot longer than I did. And before I realized it, he knew most of my intimate secrets, including the fact that my insecurities about being chubby and wimpy and everything else my father hated about me were probably the root cause of my stress incontinence. Do you think you stayed dry last night because you weren't worried about your dad catching you in the diaper? Axel's hand was cupping the back of my neck and rubbing a circle with his thumb. Probably. I tilted my head so it was leaning on his shoulder. And because of you. Yeah? He pressed his lips to the top of my head, a move I was becoming addicted to. Then I'm even more glad I was able to help. Me too. I didn't feel the same level of exhaustion that I felt the night before, but I was very sleepy and couldn't hold back a yawn. I think that means it's past your bedtime, sweetheart. Axel slipped his hand under my pillow and pulled out my blankie, so you'll probably want this. Mm-hmm. I accepted the blankie and scooted lower on the bed until I was lying flat with the sleeping bag surrounding me. Do you have work? I do. He tucked the covers around me and kissed my temple. And Kona will be right here with you. I smiled and looked up at Axel. Can Kona spend the night again? It's kinda scary here by myself. Of course, baby. He rested his forehead against mine and just breathed me in. I'll check on you before I leave, and then I'll be back in the morning. Thank you. I almost let the word daddy slip out, but I caught myself. We definitely weren't there yet, but I was really starting to like the way that word bounced around my head whenever I thought about Axel. I had a great time tonight. Me too, sweetheart. His lips finally touched mine. It was yet another chaste kiss, but he lingered just a bit longer than he had before. You have a good night. I curled both my hands around my blankie and let my eyes drift shut. I will. Good night to you too. The next morning was much like the previous. My diaper was dry. I'd slept soundly through the night, and Axel brought me breakfast. I was finally starting to believe that he was real, and my new reality wasn't just some fleeting fantasy. Axel really cared about me, even though he insisted on being ridiculously slow in the bedroom department. He explained that I was too vulnerable with all the changes in my life, and he didn't want to rush me into anything I wasn't ready for. But after a few days of torture, I was ready to rush. Rush hard. And since Axel invited me to stay at his house from Saturday afternoon after he worked on the apartment until Monday morning, I was fairly certain something would happen then. At least I hoped so. And if it didn't, it would be a good indicator that nothing intimate would ever happen. Either he was into me or not. I'd know which soon enough. On Saturday morning, Axel arrived with breakfast burritos at 7 a.m, and then went straight to work upstairs. I had some books I'd been wanting to read, so I went out to the yard with Kona and read for a few hours before working on some agility training with her. She wasn't a puppy, but she had a lot of energy, so the more active we kept her, the happier she was. And focusing on her helped the morning pass by quickly. It was after 1 when I started to get hungry and decided to check on Axel. I didn't want to ruin the surprise that Jason and Jesse had planned for me, so I only went up to the first landing and then called out to him. Axel, how are you doing up there? I'm good. Do you need anything, sweetheart? No, I was just thinking of going to get sandwiches from the deli. Are you ready for lunch? A moment later, he appeared in front of me, wearing a light coating of sheetrock dust over his whole body. Lunch sounds great. I could go get it if you'd like. I smirked, then shook my head. It's fine. Kona and I will just walk over. You want a BLT? I'd seen him eating those on a few occasions, so I knew it was one he liked. Axel's grin shone brightly, and he seemed overly touched that I knew his order. That would be amazing. Knowing I was the reason for his happiness was an amazing feeling. Okay, we'll be back in a little bit. Wait, let me give you some money. He already had his wallet out and was digging through it when I turned and started back down the stairs. Nope, this one's on me. See you in a few. It felt really good to do something for him for once. For the past week, I'd been in such a weird headspace that I'd instinctively fallen into the victim role of letting him save me. But now that I was feeling better, I wanted to make him feel cared for too. And I wanted to show him that I could give as well as I could receive. The deli across the street was one of my favorites. Kona and I were greeted by the staff, and our lunches were quickly prepared and packaged to go. I was walking on a cloud of peace when I arrived back in front of the daycare. So much in my head, I almost didn't notice my father with his face pressed up against the glass door, looking inside. Dad? I picked up Kona and held her close to my chest. What are you doing here?
Where have you been?
He looked between me and Kona. You working every day now?
Where's the money from all your time picking up crap and rolling around with these mutts?
I didn't know if he expected a real answer, but I didn't have one for him. I've had to stay here for a few days. I petted Kona's head, drawing comfort from her silky hair. I need to get back in.
Whoa there.
He placed his hand on my shoulder, holding me back.
You owe me rent. Just because you spend a night or two away doesn't mean the bills don't need to be paid.
Rent? I hadn't been paying rent since moving back, but I had been taking care of bills and groceries, so I guess that was a form of rent. Okay. I reached for my wallet, knowing I didn't have much cash on me. I think I have about $80 on me. Is that good?
$80?
He grabbed my wallet from my hand and dug into it.
No, Billy, that's not good. Where's all the money you're making here? You blowing it on all your weird gay stuff?
I can pull out more and drop it off later. I took a few steps back, not wanting Kona to be within his arm's reach. If he could abandon Peaches, I had no idea what he might do to a stranger's dog. I need to get inside now. Everything okay out here? Axel appeared from the front door, immediately positioning himself between me and my dad. Yeah, he's just leaving. I stepped closer to Axel's back, wanting to feel the warmth of his body without actually touching him. Dad stepped back and looked around Axel to make eye contact with me.
I'll just keep this. We'll settle up later.
Axel glanced down at me with a raised eyebrow. Is that your wallet? I nodded, infinitesimally. He's my dad. Axel's eyes hardened, and he turned back. You're not keeping his wallet. My dad seemed surprised that anyone would stand up for me.
Who are you? I'm his father, and he owes me money. When he's ready to pay me, he'll get his wallet back.
I wanted to melt into the asphalt and disappear. I was so embarrassed by my father's actions, and I feared Axel would finally be tired of dealing with my drama. But to my surprise, he didn't back down one bit. You'll give him his wallet back now. How much does he owe you? Dad looked between me and Axel as he considered the question.
Like $200. Rent is due.
Unless he had remortgaged the house after Mom died, the only rent due would be to him, and I never agreed to any amount. You never told me that before.
You're such a whiny little baby, Billy. Have some dignity and just pay what you owe.
Once again, Axel had his wallet out and was fishing out a stack of bills. Take it and don't come back. If Billy wants to talk to you, he'll find you.
Until then, stay away from him.
My hand instinctively grabbed the back of Axel's shirt, and I gripped it tightly. He grabbed the wallet from my dad's hand and then turned to guide me back inside. Let's go inside, Billy. There's nothing for you out here. Chapter 13. Axel. It took everything in me not to punch that dude for even daring to speak to Billy that way. But I knew that would just upset Billy even more, so I managed to maintain control of myself and get him back inside before things escalated. Once we were behind the glass door, I stood there and watched as the jerk stormed to his car and sped away, hopefully for the last time. If I ever saw him again, I would not be so calm. In fact, part of me wanted to follow him home and show him how a daddy was supposed to look after his boy. But he wasn't the one I cared to give any more attention to. When I turned around, I realized Billy wasn't standing with me. As expected, I found him on his bed, curled up with Kona licking his chin. Oh, baby. I climbed into the bed behind him, nuzzling right up against his back and wrapping my body around his so he could feel me holding him. I'm sorry that happened. Billy sniffled and then shook his head slightly. I should have known he would come here eventually. It shouldn't surprise me that he wanted money. He's a piece of crap who doesn't deserve you. I wish he was a better man, but I don't want you to let anything he said get to you. You know he's the one with the problems, right? Not you. Billy was quiet for a moment before he sighed. I know it. I mean, intellectually I do, but it still hurts to hear. I know it does, baby. I squeezed him even tighter and kissed the back of his neck. But you have me and Jason and Jesse. Even Tony and Harris would do anything for you. We can be your family now. Billy let go of Kona and wrapped both of his hands around my forearm, pulling it tightly against his chest. You have no idea how much I want that. You have no idea how much I want you. That's what I wanted to say, but it wasn't the right time. Not after what he had just experienced. Me too, sweetheart. Let's have lunch, and I'll get things finished up for the day upstairs so we can head back to my place. Okay. Billy pulled my closed palm up to his mouth and kissed it. It was one of the first times he had initiated any kind of affection, and a mountain of hope blossomed inside of me. We were going to make this work. So, this is it. I gestured for Billy to walk inside my front door, and then I closed it behind us. It's not fancy, but I've been slowly fixing it up. He kicked off his shoes and then ran his hand over the top of the leather sofa in my family room as he looked around. It's really nice, Axel. Very you. I chuckled. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Billy smiled and tucked his chin bashfully. A good thing. Like it's warm and cozy, like a real home. He looked over at me, and if I'd ever seen a loving gaze, that was it. It's just like you. With his backpack over my shoulder, I toed off my boots before pulling him into a hug and holding him tightly. I'm glad you feel that way, baby. Let me give you the tour. I showed him the kitchen and the hall bathroom that was next to the spare room. I had a daybed in there with a desk and my video game console, but I rarely use that space for anything. This is my spare room. If you'd like, you can stay in here. Or you can sleep with me. I mean, in my bed. Billy's eyes were wide, and he swallowed hard without breaking his gaze. I'd like to stay with you. Great. Then we'll put your stuff in there. I showed him to my room and placed his bag at the foot of the bed. It was only 5 in the afternoon, but we'd both had quite a week. I was thinking we could have something delivered for dinner and maybe just watch movies tonight. Yeah, that sounds good. I kinda miss having a TV around. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have thought to install one in your room. I felt like a jerk for not remembering a basic convenience. We had TV outlets planned for the bedroom and the living space up in the apartment, but I completely forgot about his interim room. We can pick one up tomorrow and get you hooked up so at least you can stream. It's fine. I have my laptop for most of the stuff I watch. He smiled and didn't look away when his cheeks turned pink. And since I've mostly been watching stuff that isn't on TV, the laptop is fine. Is that so? I was curious to know what made his face glow so beautifully. What have you been watching? Billy bit his lip. Well, I guess it's mostly research about, you know? No, I don't. I led him to the side of the bed and we both sat down. What kind of research? About having a daddy. I mean, just in case you still want to, you know? I was going to have to work with him about speaking all the words he had on his mind. But in this case, I did know. Of course I still want to. That's why you're here. That's why I spend every spare moment with you. I love being around you, and I'm excited to take things to the next level. When you're ready. The next level? Billy looked at me, then spread his hand over the comforter. Like, in here? In here. I cupped the side of his face and brushed my thumb over his cheek. When you're ready. Billy's eyes rolled up, and he threw his head back, facing the ceiling. But I am ready. Whining was new. I was surprised at how adorable it sounded from him. Are you sure? You've had a rough day today. Positive. He squared his shoulders and then dropped both of his hands to his lap. Very, very sure. I tried to convince myself that it wasn't the right time, that we needed to wait, but I was done waiting. And by the looks of it, Billy was too. Closing the distance between us, I kissed him. Really kissed him. Hard and deep and with all the tenderness I'd felt for him since the first time I met him. What started out as just a quick indulgence turned into a full-on make-out session. But before things got too far, there was yet another discussion we needed to have. Sometimes, being a daddy first was frustrating. Daddies had needs too. Chapter 14. Billy. It's finally happening. He's gonna do something. I wasn't sure exactly what, but if it felt half as good as the kissing did, I was all in. All the way in. There were some nerves about what it would be like to actually do it. I'd had a talk with Jason and Jesse about what to expect, and they assured me that when the time came, Axel would make sure it felt good. I believed that to be true, but I was still nervous. But every second that passed with him kissing me helped dissipate any lingering anxiety. At first, even the kissing was scary. Having never done it before, I did my best to follow his lead by opening and closing my mouth at the pace he set, and when his tongue slipped inside my mouth, I almost pulled away. Not because it was bad, just because it was such a foreign feeling. But as soon as his tongue curled around mine, I wanted to climb inside him, and after a few seconds, I tried to, at least with my tongue. I tentatively slipped mine inside his mouth and moved it around in the same exploratory way he did to me. The guttural moan Axel let out reassured me that I was doing okay. And since kissing was so amazing, I wanted to try it all. Granted, the best part about kissing was how close our bodies had to get to make it work. We started out sitting beside each other, but before I realized it, Axel was lying on his back with me resting on his chest and my knees straddling his hips. Baby, Axel sounded almost painted as he pressed against my chest and lifted me a bit higher away from him. We need to slow down. No, not slow. Fast. He chuckled and rolled us slightly, so I was on the bed beside him. Sweetheart, I would like nothing more than to go faster, but it's a big decision, one that we don't have to start with. A wave of rejection flowed through me as I realized I was throwing myself at him, and he wasn't receptive. With my eyes closed and my lips tightly pressed together, I merely nodded. Axel's hand pressed against the side of my cheek before moving down to my neck, cuffing it gently. What are you thinking about right now? I shook my head quickly, not wanting to answer. Axel's weight shifted, and he slid over me, holding up most of his weight, but allowing enough of his chest to press against mine so I knew he was there, before his tongue brushed across the seal between my lips and my mouth fell open. More soft kisses peppered my mouth and face before I relaxed and opened my eyes again. What? Let's try this again. His finger traced along my jaw before putting enough pressure on my chin that I had to face him. What are you thinking about right now? Honestly, I'm embarrassed. Why? When I didn't answer, Axel lifted his hand up and rested it on the side of my body. Billy, I asked you a question. Huh? I looked him in the eyes, trying to focus. You did? He smiled, and his fingers tickled my armpit, thoroughly distracting me from how good it felt when he touched me. A minute ago, you looked upset and you said you were embarrassed. Why were you embarrassed then? Oh, I sighed as those feelings of frustration and rejection came back. Because I keep throwing myself at you and you aren't taking the bait, and I need to stop doing it. But I'm just so into you? I said it as if it were a question, but as I thought about it, I realized I was right. That totally summed me up. First of all, Axel used his daddy voice to get my attention, It worked because my eyes locked right on his and didn't dare wander. It's been very hard for me to behave all week, especially when getting you ready for bed. He raised an eyebrow, reminding me of all the times he had to be good. But I didn't want to confuse you. Or me, I guess. What do you mean? I turned onto my side and rested my head on my palm, putting a bit more space between us so I could focus on what he was saying. Confused about what? Axel rubbed the back of his neck and sucked in his cheek. Well, we haven't fully discussed the boundaries of when I'm in daddy mode and when you want to be little, if that's even the right word. He waited for me to jump in. I think it is. I'd been giving this a lot of thought and felt more confident saying what I wanted. Even though I haven't needed the diaper this week to stay dry, I've liked wearing it, and I liked you putting it on me. Axel smiled affectionately, clearly pleased that I was opening up. And at night, I'd like to keep cuddling and having my blankie and even sucking my thumb, if that's okay with you. He leaned forward and dropped a kiss on my forehead. Of course it's okay. What else? Well, I want to start calling you Daddy. Is it too soon for that? I keep stopping myself, but I don't want to stop. At least, not when we're alone. That sounds good to me. He rubbed down my arm, grounding me with his touch. And what about during fun times? He waggled his eyebrows to keep it light. I huffed out a frustrated breath. Well, when we finally have some, I'll still call you Daddy, but I don't think I'll be thinking like I'm little. I was feeling very grown up when you touched me. To my surprise, Axel lowered his hand to my jeans. You're definitely all grown up. Did that mean? Do you finally believe that I'm ready? Axel closed the short distance between us and kissed me deeply, causing me to collapse back on the bed. I believe you, baby. And I believe that you'll use your words if you have any questions or want anything to slow down. I will, Daddy. It felt so good to finally say the word that had been taking up almost every ounce of extra space in my mind for a week, even if it was more of a breathless pant than anything else. I promise. Chapter 15. Axel. I had been trying to let Billy take the lead on the pace of our physical relationship, but that wasn't working anymore. We were both ready for more, and since he didn't have the experience to move forward, it was up to me to trust that he would stop me if I went too far or too fast. Besides, I was the daddy. I was supposed to be making the decisions that he struggled with. Are you ready to get undressed? I slipped my fingers under the hemline of Billy's shirt and touched the soft skin of his belly. Yes, Daddy. Will you help me? He just told me that he didn't expect to be in a little headspace during bedroom times. But he didn't sound fully out of that space either. But that was okay. This was new for him, and he didn't know exactly what to expect from me or from himself. That was fine with me. We'd figure it out together. Instead of questioning him, I stood up and gently pulled him up to his feet. Okay, arms up. My fingertips skated up his sides, making him shiver from the tickles, until his shirt was all the way over his head and tossed in the general direction of my hamper. As he often did, Billy immediately crossed his arms over his chest and belly, trying to hide his perfect skin from me. None of that, sweetheart. I lifted his arms up and rested them at his sides. If you're ready for a fully intimate relationship, then you're ready for me to see and worship every inch of you. Okay. He stared straight ahead until I reached for his buckle, and then his eyes dropped down to my hand, watching every move. Thank you. I released his pants and slid my fingers beneath the sides of his boxers, loving how soft his pristine skin felt. My eyes stayed on his face as I pushed down, ready to stop if I saw any signs of stress or discomfort. I had undressed him several times already, but this was different. I wasn't in caretaking mode, and he wasn't seeking comfort. This time, I was ready, and he was too. which added a completely different and new element to the experience. Billy shifted from one foot to the other, obviously uncomfortable with my eyes on him. But not because he didn't want me to see him. His insecurity about his weight reared its head at the most inappropriate times. "You are so beautiful, baby." I stood back and just stared as I ran my fingertips over his soft chest and across his slightly rounded belly. Absolutely perfect. "Do you really mean that?" He flexed his hands like he was willing them to stay by his side. "Even though I'm a little chubby? I love every inch of your body, I promise." I slipped my hand over his hip and gave him a nice squeeze. "I wouldn't change a single thing about you. Ever." His whole body seemed to relax. I had a lot of plans for our time together, but I couldn't stick to any kind of plan when he was so beautiful and in need of attention. If my boy needed me, I had no right to ignore him. Chapter 16. Billy. I had to believe he was exaggerating, because that truly was a life-altering experience. Like mind-blowing and heart-stopping and skin-exploding all at the same time. If he could make me feel even better than that, I was pretty sure I'd spontaneously combust. But what a way to go. Chapter 17. Axel. We both needed a rest before we could try anything else. In fact, I was fine to consider our list of first times more than sufficient for our first night together. But Billy was determined to try it all. And although he had no idea what all of it could possibly mean in my book, he did consider actual penetration part of the plan for the night. But we needed to eat. So I left him sleeping in my bed and went out to the living room to order dinner. While I was in the middle of placing an order of sushi from my favorite takeout place, I heard the shower start in my room and knew that Billy was getting cleaned up. That was good. He needed some space to think about what we'd done and how he felt about it. On the one hand, I felt like we were moving at lightning speed. But then, everything we did felt so natural that it was like we'd been together for years. I was just wearing a pair of sweats when he came out of the bedroom in a pair of pajamas with green puppies chasing butterflies. I hadn't seen them before and wondered if he had bought them especially for tonight. "Well, you look seriously adorable, sweetheart. How come I haven't seen these jammies before?" "They're new." He lifted his arms and his shirt rose just enough that I caught a glimpse of his pink skin beneath. "I bought them because I know you like dogs." "I do like dogs, and I love these on you." I pulled him against me. "Are you wearing anything underneath?" I knew he wasn't, but wanted to hear his reasoning. "Not yet. You can help me before bed. But I want to be ready for anything." He winked and gave me a kiss on the lips. "Because we're not done yet, right, Daddy?" "I suppose not. But first we need to eat. Then we'll see what we're up for after that." He rested his head on my shoulder. "I'm always up when I'm with you. Like always. I'm not even sure I can make it through dinner." "You will make it through dinner, because skipping meals isn't allowed." I kissed him softly, then gave him a soft swat. "But after that, we'll do whatever you'd like, baby. My body is yours to enjoy." I didn't expect him to say anything back, but his confidence was growing by leaps and bounds. "And my body is for you to enjoy?" The question in his tone left something to be desired, but I considered that significant progress, so I didn't dwell on it, choosing to provide positive encouragement instead. "That's right, baby. You are mine to enjoy." I playfully nipped at his ear, making him squeal in laughter. "And I enjoy you so much I could eat you right up." The doorbell rang with our dinner delivery, so we put our other hunger on hold long enough to sate our physical hunger. Sushi rice is my favorite. Billy scooped up a bite with his chopsticks. "I could eat this every day." "Me too." I leaned across the table and grabbed a spicy California roll off the platter. "Kyoko's is the best. They're consistently good and have been since I was a kid." Billy took a sip of his Coke, then leaned back against the couch. We were eating at my coffee table, but he insisted we sit on the floor so it was more authentic. I bet you were a handful when you were a kid. I grinned and waggled my eyebrows. Yeah, I gave my mom a lot of gray hairs, that's for sure. He smiled wistfully and then took another bite of his rice. Are your parents still around? My mom is. I put down my chopsticks and turned to face him. She went into assisted living a few months ago. That's when I inherited Kona. But she's doing pretty well there. Loves gossiping with the ladies, and even has a gentleman friend that she's had dinners with a few times. I shivered dramatically at the thought of my mom hooking up in her old people home. But I guess she had needs too. She sounds pretty cool if she's still getting action at her age. Yeah, she is. I hadn't brought it up sooner because I didn't want to remind him of his own loss, but now seemed like the right time to invite him to meet her. I usually have lunch with her on Sundays. She goes to church with her crew and then I meet her in their cafe. If you'd like to join me tomorrow, I'd love for you to meet her. Tomorrow? He suddenly seemed nervous. Already? Isn't it too soon? I mean, you met my dad, but that wasn't intentional. Hey baby, breathe. It's okay either way. I placed my hand on his neck and pulled him closer. I already told her I was working this weekend and probably wouldn't make it, so we don't have to go. But I wanted to extend the offer. It's an open invitation, so whenever you're ready, I'll take you. He stared at his food for a moment before turning back to me. Do you think she'll like me? I mean, what if she thinks I'm not good enough for you? Impossible. I pulled his hand up to my lips and gave it a kiss. She has impeccable taste, so I know she'll love you. But even if she doesn't, nothing will change the way I feel about you. Okay then. He took a deep breath and smiled. I'd love to meet your mom sometime. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. It meant a lot to me that Billy was so open to my suggestions. He didn't have a lot of experience to draw from, and though he'd witnessed his friends developing healthy relationships, he still had so many insecurities that only time would mend. But I was a patient man, and I could wait as long as he needed me to, because Billy already owned my heart, body, and soul, and I planned to work day and night proving to him that he was perfect to me. Chapter 18. Billy. After dinner and a movie, I got the feeling that Axel was trying to rush me to bed, but not in the good way that I wanted to be rushed to bed. He kept yawning and reminding me to brush my teeth like we were actually gonna sleep. But sleep was the furthest thing from my mind. Axel was officially my daddy, and I wanted to be his good boy. I peed and brushed and got into his bed with my blinky in hand, ready for whatever he had in mind. Do you have everything you need, baby? Axel came into the room after turning out all the lights and locking up. What about a diaper? I raised my eyebrow teasingly. Not yet. We can put that on after. After what? He undressed. Once we fall asleep, it'll be too late. But if you choose not to wear one, that's okay too. It's no problem to do laundry tomorrow if needed. We'll probably have to wash the sheets anyway. Is that so? He went to his side of the bed and yanked on the sheet. You know exactly what Daddy needs, don't you, sweetheart? I never imagined letting anyone get that up close and personal, but I trusted Daddy to know what he wanted and what I'd like. And I really liked what he was doing. Axel was my present. I hoped he'd be my future too, but presently he was my entire world. Nothing else existed. As if I were having an out-of-body experience, I imagined what we looked like from an outsider's perspective, and it was the hottest image ever to exist. Chapter 19. Axel. By the time we were finally ready to sleep, we were both exhausted. It had been a long day filled with emotional and physical highs and lows, but it was also one of the best days of my life. Because even though it was still early times, the connection Billy and I shared was strong enough that I knew we had something real. Something that wasn't going to disappear. Maybe not ever. And that made my love for him grow even stronger. Yes, I was able to admit it to myself. Although I thought it should have taken much longer according to books and movies, I knew without a doubt that I was in love with Billy. And that made me sleep like I was on a fluffy cloud of contentment. Before we passed out that night, Billy asked me to put him in a diaper. I was happy to do it because he looked so darn cute wearing it, and because I knew he would sleep better with it on. Whether he actually needed it or not, I didn't want him to be worried throughout the night about having an accident. It wouldn't bother me in the least if he did, but I knew that was something he would not only stress about and probably not get a good night's sleep, but if he did wet, he would feel terrible about it in the morning. And I didn't want him to have any regrets about anything. A sliver of light started to poke through the drawn curtains, so I rolled over, chasing the darkness. But once I was awake, my bladder was too, and I needed to pee. Moving carefully so I didn't disturb my boy, I slipped out of my bed and went to do my business. When I got back, Billy was muttering in his sleep. I couldn't catch every word, but he said something about 21, and I assumed he meant a game of blackjack. But when his hips started to thrust, I knew what he was doing. A small grin spread across my face as I crawled back into bed, but I wasn't sure how to respond. Oops. Busted. I grinned and pulled the blankets up as I settled in beside him. I hope you don't mind that I decided to help you out. He chuckled and then pressed his face against my chest, nuzzling up against me in my new favorite position. Not at all. I was having the best dream, and then, when I woke up, it was the best wake-up. A soft laugh rumbled out of my chest. I just didn't want you to think you had an accident. Billy sucked in a breath, and his arms slipped around me, holding me tightly. You really are the best daddy, Axel. I've never had somebody who thought so far ahead of my needs or how I would feel about things that might happen in the future. I can't tell you how grateful I am to have you in my life now. I shifted his weight so he was lying mostly on top of me, then tickled his back. I'm so grateful to have you too, baby. You make me happy in ways I didn't even realize was possible. All I want in this world is to think about ways to make you happy. Just keep doing what you've been doing, and I'll be happy forever. I squeezed him tighter and pressed a kiss to the top of his head. I like the sound of that. But I do have one question. What was your dream about? It sounded like you were playing 21. Were you in Vegas? Billy scooted back a bit and then looked at me before he burst out laughing. No, never been to Vegas. 21 was the score I gave last night. He rolled his eyes at the silliness, and my heart blossomed at how easily I could make him smile like that. After last night, I was thinking how it was definitely a 20 on the scale, and that I might not survive a 21. But then, in my dream, you were doing it again, trying for 21. I was almost there, but then, it suddenly became more like a 50. A 50, huh? You're definitely setting the bar high. I don't know if I can beat that. He pressed his cheek to my chest, and then sighed as if he was ready to fall asleep again. You don't have to beat anything. Just holding me like this is a 50. Everything you do is the best ever. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. Within a few moments, Billy's breathing evened out, and I knew he was sleeping again. Asleep across my chest, safe and warm and exactly where I always wanted him to be. How was I possibly going to let him go back to the daycare to sleep when we would both be so much happier with him here? I closed my eyes and drifted off again, happy to get a few more hours of rest before the day fully started. I had plans for my boy, and we both needed our energy for them. Chapter 20. Billy. It was almost 10 when I woke up for real. I was still curled around Axel in a death grip, but he had the same hold around my back, like he didn't want me to leave. It was the best. Jason and Jesse both said that they knew they were in love within just days of meeting their daddies. So when I told them I was starting to fall for Axel, neither of them were surprised. I didn't have any past experience to go off of, but it made sense that if we were truly right for each other, we would know it quickly. Having to work for weeks or months in order to know that you loved somebody didn't feel like an easy relationship. It sounded like it would be almost forced to me. But with Axel, everything was easy. In the good moments and the bad, I knew he would take care of me and make everything okay. Good morning, sleepyhead. His hand skated over my back, gently rousing me from my thoughts. Good morning, Daddy. I hope I didn't wake you. I kissed his chest and then slipped off his body so I was on the pillow beside him. No, I've been awake for a little while, just enjoying how great it feels to have my boy in my arms. I smiled up at him. I was thinking the same thing. Well, about how nice it was to be with you in the morning. It's the best way to wake up. After lunch, I was finally ready for a break. I was sore, and I wasn't sure I could go any more if I tried. At least, not without some serious hydration. But that was okay because I had a few other things I needed to do. I started pulling out the ingredients I had delivered and spread them out across his kitchen counter. Axel appeared behind me, pressing his front to my back and giving me a quick hug. Are you ready to start baking, sweetheart? Yeah, I want to try a new pumpkin recipe that I think the dogs will like. Kona will get to be my taste tester. She'll eat anything, so I don't know how good of a judge she'll be. But I'd love to watch you work while I get some of my work done too. You're so cute with your apron on. I smoothed down the front of the apron Axel had given me and nodded in agreement. It was blue with a train on a track across the front. Yeah, my daddy knows what I like. He spun me in his arms and kissed me hard. I like hearing you say that. Breathless, I panted against his mouth. I really like saying it. For the next few hours, I baked in Axel's kitchen, humming along to the soft rock he had been playing in the background. It was kind of cute that such a big, tough guy listened to the same radio station that my mom always listened to. But it was also really nice to hear such familiar songs. They were the songs of my childhood. He had some work to do on his laptop and needed to place some orders now that the real permit for the apartment had been approved. So we settled into an afternoon of domestic bliss that felt exactly right. Much of the time we were silent, occasionally jumping in with some chit-chat or a random thought, but never feeling the need to fill the silence between us. It was like we had lived together for ages, and this was our routine, even though it was the first time we'd ever spent 24 hours together. I packaged up the biscuits after they cooled and left a bowlful on the table for Kona. She seemed to like that last batch best, so these are from that. I scooted the bowl closer to Axel as I sat down across from him. Thank you. I think she loves having you around almost as much as I do. He winked and something fluttered in my tummy. Well, I like being around. My voice was quiet but firm. I was done holding my thoughts. I would never find the happiness that I wanted with Axel if I was afraid to speak in front of him. About that, he extended his arm across the table and opened his hand. I dropped my hand onto his and he clasped it tightly. Maybe you should just stay here. It doesn't make any sense for you to sleep by yourself at work when I've got a perfectly warm chest for you to sleep on. I held my breath and bit the inside of my cheek as I looked at him, gauging his sincerity. Do you really mean that? Like, isn't it soon for us to make that move? Maybe it is. He shrugged and moved around the table so he was sitting right beside me. But last night was the best of my life, and I don't ever want it to end. I know that I love you and want to spend every minute I can with you. He raised an eyebrow, encouraging me to speak. How do you feel? Tears filled my eyes as I nodded emphatically. The same. Exactly the same. I love you too, and I don't want to sleep by myself anymore either. I want to sleep with you. Always. He pulled me from my chair onto his lap and kissed me with both the intensity I felt from him in the bedroom, but also a tenderness that spoke volumes of his true feelings. You make me so happy, Billy. I promise to do everything I can to always make you happy too. I sniffed and wiped my tears on my shoulder as I nodded. Me too, Daddy. I'll do anything to make last night and today last forever. Then it's settled. He popped a quick kiss on my cheek and then patted my hip so I could stand up. Let's head back to the daycare so you can get the rest of your stuff, and we can drop off these biscuits for tomorrow. Okay. My smile quickly faltered as I worried about what this meant for the boarding business. But what about the apartment? The guys have spent so much time and money building it for me. I looked at Axel. You've spent so much time building it for me. I'd feel terrible if I never even used it. He pulled me against his side as we walked toward the bedroom. Don't feel guilty at all. Tony and Jason planned to build that apartment no matter what. We rushed it a little bit so that you would have a safe place to stay if you needed. But they've been getting requests for boarding since they opened. This is important for their business. Besides, he turned me around. Once we were inside the bedroom, he unfastened the apron from around my neck and waist. If you choose to work overnights, Kona and I can stay there with you. It's a pretty sweet apartment. I grinned wide and threw my arms around him, bouncing on my toes. Really? You'd do that? I really do want to help with overnight shifts, but not if it means being away from you. Of course, baby. Don't worry about those details. We'll figure it all out. He kissed my head, and then I took a step back. Things always work out when they're meant to be. Epilogue. Axel. Billy and I stepped into my mom's studio apartment, and he let Kona down to greet her. My babies are all here. My mom was sitting at the small table by the window, reading her book. She scooted back just in time for Kona to hop onto her lap. Yes, sweetheart, I missed you too. Billy stepped up to her next, pulling my mom into a warm embrace. Hi, Mom. It's good to see you. Your hair looks nice. Just got it done. Thanks for noticing. He and my mom bonded quickly after the first time they met. Billy said she reminded him of his own mom, and she insisted he call her by the endearment if he was comfortable with it. I didn't know if he started doing it not to hurt her feelings or because he wanted to, but in just these few months, he had started to truly treat her like his own mother. In fact, they talked daily, usually about recipes that he wanted to try for me. Oh, you're so sweet, but you're looking a little skinny there. She raised an eyebrow in my direction. Are you feeding this boy? I raised my hand in surrender. I am, I promise. He cooks for me every day. I patted my own belly. Maybe I'm eating too much and not saving enough for him, because I'm definitely taking on the pounds that he's been losing. Billy shrugged, and I could see a pink tint blossoming across his cheeks. I'm eating just fine. But my walks with Kona and the other dogs have been getting longer and longer. He glanced up at me and winked. It's nice to have a reason to take care of myself. He sat down in one of the chairs across from Mom, and I sat beside him, scooting my chair right up to his so our thighs were touching. My hand instinctively went to the back of his neck, cuffing him so he was reminded that I was there. Always. Speaking of taking care of yourself, I've started doing water aerobics again. The pool is heated to 90 degrees, so it's lovely on my old bones. That's great, Ma. I know you used to like to do that. I faced her, noticing the renewed vigor that had been missing for a few years. You really do look great. Yeah, I know I was in a funk for a while, but I've decided that I'm not getting any younger, so if I want the rest of my time here to be happy and comfortable, I need to stay in shape and do things I love doing. I squeezed Billy's neck and rubbed my thumb across his skin, encouraging him to share his news as well. He cleared his throat and took a deep breath. Actually, I have some news too. You know I've always wanted to open my own bakery, right? Mom nodded, excited by where he was going with this announcement. Well, there's a bakery that allows pastry chefs to rent time in their kitchen and sell from their storefront. It's kind of like a co-op, but I only have to work there a few hours per week. Mom clapped her hands together. That's wonderful, sweetheart. And will you still work at the doggy daycare? Oh yeah, I can't give that up. But I'll probably do part-time at each, taking occasional night shifts when we have dogs boarded and then working in the bakery a couple mornings per week. I'm really excited about it. I leaned over and kissed his temple. I'm so proud of you, baby. You're an amazing baker, And now humans will get to enjoy all your delicious creations. I reached over and scratched Kona's head, not just the rugrats you've been making it for. Billy laughed and swatted at my arm. I love baking for all my fur babies. But yes, it will be nice to get actual feedback, not just wagging tails. We had dinner with my mom, and then I took Billy back home. To our home. The place we were building our life together. Now and forever. This has been Loved Like a Little, written by Aria Grace, narrated by Alex Michael. Copyright 2023 by Aria Grace. Production copyright by Aria Grace.